Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the second video of this playlist which I'm doing, which is like ABCDs of astrology, the basics of astrology, which everyone should know. And congratulations, you've made it to the second video because you're not paying any money for this, zero money, but what you're doing is that you're investing your valuable time in learning something which is cool. I consider it cool. It's a cool knowledge, I would say. So I am back with the second video, and as you can read the title, I am going to talk about the significance of each house in Vedic astrology. And as I told you in the first video that I am not talking about the South Indian Vedic chart, and I'm also not talking about the Western chart, but we are going to cover those charts as well. And the reason for that is because we can come across these different types of charts as well, so we should just know like that. Okay, now that we are here, you can see that with the green color I have actually written all the houses that are there. Okay, and the number is also following in the blue color. So first house, second house, we have 12 houses in Vedic astrology. Okay, it's quite heavy, so I'm going to, but I need to hold it. Okay, I can hold it with my hand. Oh yeah. So we have 12 houses in Vedic astrology, and in even Western and even in South Indian, I have to cover that, so I'm going to cover that because in the end of this playlist you're going to also see how to read a South Indian chart, and you're also going to see how to read a Vedic South Indian Vedic chart. Okay, Western and South Indian. So I think it's important for me to cover that point, that 12 houses are there in astrology total, and there is no 13th house and there is no zero house or anything like that. And the first house is this house. Okay, now I know essentially it should be written on the board or something, but I'm assuming that when you're watching it, maybe you're making a mental note of this. Okay, or you're literally making a literal note of it in your copy or notebook or something. Okay, that the first house in Vedic astrology basically belongs to so I'm going to keep it now because it is not of any importance anymore, but the whiteboard will make its feature again, don't worry. So the first house in Vedic astrology basically stands for the body. Okay, the physical body that we have. We all have a physical body, all right? So this is my body, right? So the entire body, including something that is not a part of the physical body, something that is a part of the body which is not visible, which is my persona, my personality, or anybody's personality, that is also your first house. Okay, so let's say I like your personality, you say it to someone, or someone says to you, man, I like your personality, right? Now the personality cannot be literally seen, but figuratively, like maybe your mannerisms are good, the way you communicate, it's very nice, and henceforth, so all that jazz, the personality, the looks, the body, physique, this is all your first house. Okay, moving to the second house is, but yeah, the first house is also the head region. Okay, and the reason for that is, as I told you in the first video, that you are going to learn, when you learn about the Kaal Purusha Kundli, you learn about the zodiac also and the house also, because they kind of sort of like are the same. So the head region, why the first house is just simply the head region, nothing below that, because of course there's nothing above that and nothing below that. That's because the 1 number sign, which is your Aries, also is a representation of head. That's why you will see that there are many Aryans, so I would like to call Aries as Aryans, who have their way of styling their head. Okay, they would like to go with a cool specs if they they're into, if they have got spectacles. Aryans would also like to get that scarf, bandana, stuff like that. They like to have their head decorated, you can say, in a way. If Indian, they're into mang tikas and stuff, so the head part is very prominent. That's why the first house is also specifically the head part as well. Now the second house it belongs to the sign Taurus, and the second house is ruled by Venus. If the first house is belongs to Aries, and it is ruled by what? Mars. So the second house is of Venus. And which Venus? The Taurus one. Okay, so Venus also rules, like Aries rules two signs, which is the first number sign and the 8 number sign. The first number being Aries and the 8 number being Scorpio. The second, so Venus rules Libra and Taurus. Libra is the 7 number zodiac, and your Taurus is the second number zodiac. So the second house is majorly about this portion. Okay, the of course it's like the ENT, ear, nose, throat, but particularly this and the mouth. That's why eating habits is also sometimes seen from the second house. Okay, now when we talk about second house, we need to be careful, because we don't just have a thirst, or we just don't have hunger for something which is, you know, like food required for the body. Because second house is also our personality. So the second house is also a representation of, it's also a representation of ourself, because it is also our personality. Now it's also symbolic for our face, because ENT is being covered, right? And in general, Taurus is the sign of all the possessions that we have. So food is our possession, family is our possession, and so is money. That's why hunger and thirst is there for money as well, which is the reason second house is also the house of money. But in astrology, as I will cover more all the houses, you will see that second house is the house primarily of money that, you know, comes to you from your family, because it is 7th from 8th, and 8th house is also known as the house of inheritance. So anything that we inherit, we essentially inherit majorly from our family, right? So the second house is family, and second house is also the house of money henceforth. And I think that is it for now, because I can keep going on and on. Third house is the house of your thoughts, the way you think, the way you kind of sort of like process things, because it is the house of Gemini. It is the sign, 3 numbers, the sign of Gemini, and third house is essentially like majorly the Gemini house. Okay, so the third house is also called as the Upacha house. Okay, the first house is the house of is a quadrant house, and the second house being your earth house. Okay, which I am going to cover, but as I am covering, I am also speaking whatever that is there. So the third house is the way you think, your thoughts, the way you process things, and it is also the house of your younger siblings. Okay, the thing is this, that each house is a representation of not just the self, but also the world around us. That's why astrology is very, in a way, it's kind of tough, but if you have good memory, and if you are intuitive, if you, most importantly, if you love the subject, then, you know, you kind of sort of like get hold of the whole thing. So going forward, third house is also the house of our siblings, relatives, neighbors. Okay, the people around us, that the people that live around, next to us or something, whatever, adjacent or far from you. So third house is the house of communication. We communicate with others, and this is a very social house. Okay, so some people can be blessed with good third houses. Okay, and some people can be having difficult third house. The thing is that this house gets better with time, no matter whatever sort of planet is placed in it, whether it be Saturn or any of the 9 planets that exist in Vedic astrology, which I'll be covering in the next video. Doesn't matter. Third house gets better with time, because the way you think, the way you process, the way you see the world or process the world, the way you communicate, everything gets better with time. Okay, that is the principle of Vedic astrology. That is the principle of life as well. So that's what the third house is. Now going to the fourth house is originally of the house of Cancer, because the 4 number falls there, which is a representation of which zodiac sign? Cancer. Now, fourth house is a very tricky house, need to be understood very well. If the second house is our family, fourth house is our family, but it doesn't depend, it's not necessarily the family that we come from, because that will always remain the second house. So the fourth house is the house, let's say if particularly for women in India, I'll give that example. When a woman gets married, her in-laws is like her family, it's considered that way, right? So second house is the family that she was born in and raised, wherever she was raised by people, that's the second house. But the family now that she'll be going to, because now switching places, not being with the parents that she used to be before, and now she's going to her in-laws. While the 8th house is considered as the in-laws, and that house will always remain that yes, this is the house of in-laws. 4th house is the home, the homely environment. Okay, so the 4th house can change. So because it's moon keeps changing, right? Moon is never this one phase, it's different phases. That's how moon is. So you can always, it's not necessary that if you live in a particular home when you were 10 years old, you are always going to live there. It is very much changeable. So the 4th house is peace of mind, the home environment, mother's upbringing, which gives you peace of mind, because let's say if you didn't get a very good motherly nourishment from your mother, then it can impact your peace of mind growing up, or as an adult. And then we talk about the inner child and all of that. This is that house. Okay, because whatever sort of environment that you got when you were growing up in your adolescence and early years, that's the 4th house. And I also told you the different impact, like when you're married, whether you're a man or a woman, second house is also always the house that you have come from, but 4th is the one that now you have. So it is both the mix of like your in-laws and the house that originally your family. Okay, and let's say if you are in a nuclear family, then this is the house where you stay, like that. Okay, now going to and real estate is very important when we consider 4th house. So anybody who is into real estate, who's into construction work, who's slightly into work like architecture that involves, so architecture is very much, I can say, a Venusian domain, but it involves land, right? So anything to do with land is all about 4th house, because 4th house is about land. Okay, so those sort of fixed assets and possessions like your cars and other things, that's 4th house. Moving on to the 5th house. 5th house is the house of creativity, any sort of creation that you do, even procreation, producing children, doing anything that is creative, doing something that is dance, music, painting, theaters, arts, drama, kathak, whatever it may be. That's your 5th house. So 5th house is like your heart, anything that comes from the heart. Okay, that's your 5th house. But in medical astrology, 5th house is not the heart, that is your 4th. Okay, in medical astrology, 5th house is your gut, like your stomach. Okay, so I'm not covering this as a very much from a medical astrology point of view, because I just want to make the basics very clear. But while I'm talking about the basics, I'm also covering a little intermediate concepts, because I believe that beginners is something that anyways like you are going to absorb, or maybe some of you already know. But if you even like get a little bit more of intermediate, it's not a problem, right? Because there are still so many things that anyways will be left to cover, because this is astrology that we're talking about. It's not any other signs that okay, hunky dory, whatever goes on, life goes on. Okay, it's a very deep subject, still a lot of things would remain. So fifth house is, because it's also procreation, this is also the house of your eldest child, children in general, I would say. But yes, if we go more into depth than the first child, and this being your like fifth house, fifth house is the house of fun. That's why it's like, you can also say, anybody, see, whenever we talk about a sporty person, whenever we talk about a very active person, we always take the first house. Okay, but even the fifth house is a lot about fun. So anything that some person may find studying or being nerdy as a very fun activity, but the other person may feel like, I want to really, be out there and play sports, that's fun for me. So the fun element in your life is also the fifth house, which is why romanticizing life, romantic stuff and romantic things in life, the romantic factor in your life or whatever, that is also your fifth house. Okay, so because being romantic is also fun. And if you see from the seventh house, it's the 11th house from the seventh. Okay, so it's the gain of the seventh house, which is why, so this can be a little bit too much for some people, so that's why I'm not going to speak too much up on it. But yes, so your fifth house is all of it, and it's a very nice house. Okay, it's good house, and it's a very important house because it's also the Trikona house. So while your first, fourth, seventh and 10th are your quadrant houses, I'm just saying it, I'll be explaining it in the other video as well. Your fifth and ninth are like your Trikona houses, which I forgot what they are called in English, but as I'm telling you, I'll be talking about it separately. Now the sixth house, very tricky house. So in this particular video, I'm just covering the 6 houses, and then from 7th to 12th I'll be covering in the next video. So because this video is going to get too long and maybe a little bit too much for me to while I upload, so I'm just going to leave it here. And yeah, sixth house is your one of the Upacha houses, but also one of the Trik houses. I'm going to explain you. I told you like Upacha houses get better with time, like the third house, but the Trik houses are tricky. Just trick with trick you can just take the word tricky. Okay, like 6th, 8th, 12th, they are your Trik houses. So the 6th house is tricky because it talks about a lot of things that are pending from past life. They are your prarabdha, something that like you owe to the other people, person, or to yourself. That is why the 6th house becomes the house of debts. Any planet that goes inside it. Now, when we talk about houses, we also have to keep in mind that planets are going inside it, or it can be an empty house. I'll explain you the method how to read an empty house, but let's say any planet goes inside it, right? I've explained you 1st to 6th house. Let's say, how are you going to understand? You need to know the significance first, right? That's why 6th house is the house of debt, something that you owe to the other person. And that does not mean that you don't owe it to yourself, or this house is just because it's the house of like giving away stuff and nothing of it is yours. That does not really mean that it's just other people or someone else. So the first thing to understand is that because this house is about giving away debt, like something that you took from someone, now you need to give it back. You took like too much of love from someone, but you didn't give it to the other person. Now you need to give it. This is your 6th house. Anything that is pending, that's your 6th house. That's why in like we make mistakes. Even like if you're the fittest person, still you're making certain mistakes, like maybe not eating well, or maybe not doing your routine is not nice, maybe you do overtime or something like that, right? Because this is a tricky house, the explanation is tricky. Please be patient. Don't be like, why just she doesn't get to the point and explain it to me, my god, she's making me crazy. Please, The tricky houses are going to take time, so you please be patient, I would say, and hold your horses and make notes. That's all. Okay, so the sixth house, I'll continue, and that's why I'm not going beyond sixth house in this video. Okay, any meaningful content will take at least 10 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes if needed. It depends upon the explainer, how the person explains stuff. I'm assuming this is very normal, the time that I've taken. So the sixth house, house of giving away, charity, something that you owe to the other people, diseases, because not in every lifetime we tend to take care of ourselves properly, right? We can make mistakes, and because this is the house, in medical astrology it represents our intestines. If you see, intestine is very important, the small or large, whatever, most of the assimilation, the food that you eat, health is in our gut, is in our intestine. That's why this is the house of intestine also. But if you see, this is the house of daily routines, the mediocre, like, I'm sorry to use the word, the mundane life, like the daily routine that we have. Like, you get up 6 a.m, 8 a.m, whatever, you go to sleep 8 p.m, 10 p.m, whatever, right? Whatever that you do, every nitpick, small things that you do throughout the day, that's your sixth house. So if you have a very heavy or active sixth house, you need to pay attention to your daily routines. That's all. You may have debts, that's okay, you're already giving them away, you don't need to worry about it. You have debts, listen to me, you are already repaying for it, you don't need to do something for it, life will make you do for it. You have any planets in the sixth house, that doesn't mean you're diseased. You're being forced to take care of anything that you don't take care of, and because you don't take care of, maybe the disease comes and goes away, but it teaches you how to take care of it. Okay, charity, you've taken from people, you only knew how to took, or maybe that's a bad way of saying it, which installs guilt in someone, but let's say you just didn't give it back. Okay, your time was up, death happened, whatever. You need to learn to give, and the sixth house teaches you that. That's why sixth house is also the house of people that are that cannot help themselves properly, and we need to be there. That's why sixth house is the house of non-profit organizations, animals, birds, animals, in general. I don't need to say birds, because these people, they need our help, and all the more now because of the way we're proceeding in today's time. We're kind of very negligent of it. Okay, and I would also say the sixth house is also the house of 1 2 3 4 5, yeah, so it's the fifth from second, it's second house. Okay, so whenever we talk about sixth house, we need to take care of the resources as well, because let's see, it's the earth house also. So the earth houses are your second, sixth and 10th. They are your earth houses. So earth means literally earth, which have the earth element into it. Okay, I'm going to explain all this to you more in depth, but for now this is it. So second house, sixth house and 10th house in itself a house of resource, because earth gives us so many resources, right? So whenever we talk about sixth house, we also need to keep in mind that it's debt, it's diseases, and it's also enemies. Now these are the enemies that are hidden, that you cannot see, and you may really, if any planet is sitting there, or even empty house, if we have to study, you just need to keep in mind how we can ignore hidden enemies. I also want to really give out a problem to the solution, what can be done, because sixth house is in general very lots of conflicts and problems. Like if you see a daily routine of someone, you will find one problem or the other. Like let's say a plumbing problem today in your house. You need to get it fixed. The light is not working properly. You need to get it fixed. Sixth house is a lot about fixing stuff as well. That's why it's health, and that's why it's also the house of healers, and like medical practitioners, dentists and doctors have a very heavy sixth house. So problem solving comes into it. So with that, take care of resources also, and that way like you won't really make any hidden enemies or something. We'll be talking about it in depth. It really needs a video in itself, but yeah, that's how much time I really took, 6 minutes or something, to explain the Trik Bhav, and I'm going to take that much time again for the 12th and the 8th house as well. So with this I have completed the signification of houses, first house to sixth house. I'll see you soon in the next video, where I'll be discussing the significance of the 7th house all the way till the 12th. So stay tuned, like my video if you really liked it, subscribe to my channel, because I'll be educating you guys more on whatever I have knowledge of about Vedic astrology. And by the way, I'm still learning. I'm just a learner, and it's my hobby. It was never like my profession or something, but yeah, I'm into it, and now I do it even professionally. So see you in the next video.